It's embarrassing to have a baby dad that acts like a baby mom. It's fucking ghetto. I'm not even trying to be funny with that. For a little story time. Okay, this man lives an hour away basically. Every other weekend is his weekend. Halfway point that we have set in our order is his mom's house. 3 months ago, this man texts me and says, my mom moved and it's gonna have to be to my house. So he expected me to drive an hour every time. On Friday is our drop off and pick up is Sunday. Does not give me any gas money. He doesn't let me know what the fuck the plan is, right? Okay, cool. So usually that means he's not getting him. So my son asked me to go to a fucking birthday party. I let my son go to the birthday party. Last minute he wants to say, yeah, I want him. Okay, well, you call your son and you let him know you're about to come pick him up. Why do I have to call him? Let's fast forward. Junior calls him, tells him, hey, dad, I want to go to the birthday party. He thinks that it's funny and sends me this text message. Order is pick up, drop off at his mom's house. Says, and it could be altered. But mind you, my dad has Junior because they're going to a birthday party. My dad. I say, Dad, he wants Junior to be dropped off at his mom's house at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I'm gonna come get him. It's the good dad that I have says, no, T, don't worry about it. I'll drop him off at his mom's house. He's already here and he's having fun. It's okay. Gets to his house at 7:30 this morning. Drops Junior off. He texts my phone 9 o'clock. So that's 2 hours or whatever. Didn't drop Junior off. My dad, I said, Dad, you said that you dropped Junior off this morning, right? He said, yeah, I dropped him off. I knocked on his mom's door. I dropped him off. Junior is at your mom's house. He texts me this. You didn't drop Junior off. Why the fuck does it matter? Y'all don't understand what this man has put me through. Last year, this man was trying to take custody of my son and put me on child support. Every single mom knows how it feels when you try so hard to make sure your child is something in this world. My son is in the gifted program. My son is AB honor roll. My son gets awards every fucking month. Stay here and I try so hard to make sure my son is something. Y'all watch me every day. Y'all see how happy I am. I'm not a bitter ass baby mom, y'all. Made sure that you have a son on this earth that you can be proud of. Don't ask him for nothing. All I want is respect, yo. And I get games like y'all saw in those text messages. Y'all see how highly my son talks. See how amazing my son is. That is me. Sit down and read books with him. I sit down and study with him. At least you can do is literally just respect me and talk to me like a fucking human. Why did you intentionally call your mom and ask, hey, did Teresa drop him off or did somebody else drop him off? But y'all, I am so like, he tried to do this and I just said, you know what, have a blessed one. I'll be there at pickup on Sunday. Oh, tomorrow is Sunday. I know, I'm a whole fucking adult, bro. No matter how hard I try, it doesn't matter. This is what I get.
My story of the worst roommate experience of my entire life. Strap in. I've been holding off on telling the story for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is I've been trying to decide whether I want to make this just one part. I try and say as much as I can in one 10-minute video, or I can make this multiple parts and really give you the max amount of detail so you can fully grasp why this was such a deeply traumatic experience for me. And I think I'm just going to give you every detail that comes to my head because that feels like the only appropriate way to truly tell the story. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Lauren. I live in New York City. I moved here in September of 2024 with 2 random roommates that I found on Facebook. Back it up a little bit to May of 2023 when I even decided that I was going to move to New York. I was living in Nashville. I had fully healed from my divorce. I realized that I had moved back to Nashville because it felt like the most comfortable place for me to actually heal and kind of ground myself again. And when I actually healed and woke up, I realized that all of my friends in Nashville were just in very different phases of life than me. And to be completely honest, I was just kind of bored there and it just didn't feel like my forever place. It's always been a dream of mine to move to New York. So literally like 2 weeks later after I made up my mind, I told my family and friends that I was moving. In June, I joined a Facebook group for young females moving to New York City. It has about 118,000 members. In this Facebook group, I met the antagonist of this story. We are going to refer to her as Karen because that's who she is in my mind. At first, I thought that this person was a soul sister to me. I had never felt so closely connected to someone so instantly. In June, when I decided I was going to move here, I briefly met her on Facebook and I decided to come to the city. I have family that live here. So I was like, hey, I'm just gonna come visit and explore, see different areas, and see where I could possibly live. And that's when I met Karen in person for the first time. Our initial introduction was incredible. We got drinks for about an hour and a half. She treated to drinks. We trauma bonded instantly. I had never met someone at that age who had gone through something so deeply traumatic like I had. And I want to preface, the trauma bonding aspect is the reason why I was as fooled as I was by Karen. So from June to September, when we actually find a lease in New York, we move in, there were so many red flags, I can't even count them all on one hand. I had my parents telling me multiple times, Lauren, you need to see this person for who they are. Maybe this is a sign that you should move in by yourself, or you shouldn't be moving to New York at all. I did obviously, at the age of 28, consider living by myself in this city, but it is outrageously priced, as you know about New York, and it just seemed like the only realistic feasible option for me was to go the random roommate route. I was actually kind of selfishly excited about having a random roommate because I didn't know that many people in the city, and when you can get a roommate that's also a friend, boom, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. That's a very lucky scenario. Initially, it was just going to be myself and Karen, but our budgets were slightly different, and we were not able to find an apartment that met both of our needs. Word to the wise, if you are thinking about moving to New York and you're thinking about moving in September, just know it is the worst possible time to move to the city. You have all of the recent college graduates, their jobs just started. It's the time that everyone is flocking to the city. So it's ultra competitive and prices are raised out the roof because they know that there are so many people fiending for these places. There were only two things that I requested in this apartment from Karen. I needed natural lighting, most importantly, because I film for a living, and natural lighting is truly crucial to a filming environment. And I also wanted a relatively new apartment, modern finishings, anything I could to make it slightly more aesthetic, because if you are in the content industry, then you know having an aesthetic background or environment where you're filming is very important to your content. After our initial introduction in June, she was going out of town for a couple weeks, and when she got back, she was like, let's hit the ground running and find a place starting in July. I was on my computer every single day from the second I decided to move to New York because I was excited about it. I didn't necessarily know the areas I wanted to live in, didn't know what apartments were available, so I was browsing the internet street easy 24/7, finding places, sending them to her, and getting zero responses. She was quite literally the least responsive person ever, but because of that trauma bonding, I had faith. Pretty much from the moment I met her, every single thing that we did, every conversation we had was really under her beck and call the whole time, and I didn't necessarily realize it, but also I was inexperienced when it came to New York City. She was already living here, so I kind of trusted her maybe a little bit more than I should have, given she was still a total complete stranger to me. Basically, from the time I met her in June to the beginning of August, we had gotten absolutely nowhere, and I was starting to lose faith. So I was like, all right, I don't know that we're gonna get anywhere unless I come back to the city and we set up apartment tours and we go together. So that's what I did, because at this point I was supposed to be moving out in 2.5 weeks. So you can't schedule movers to pick up your stuff if they don't have a delivery address. Come to the city, I come for 5 days, I'm staying at a hotel in Midtown. It's wildly expensive, and I wanted to have apartment listings, multiple listings a day set up for us to go tour. When I tell you the apartments that we were able to tour based on our combined budget were like shoeboxes, and not only was I coming with myself, I'm also coming with 2 animals. I also knew that she had a dog as well, 90 pounds, blind, total sweetheart, and got along really well with my pets, but not the point. We were coming with a lot of baggage. In typical New York fashion, these apartments that we were viewing were absolute dumpsters, shoeboxes, and it just was not working. So we actually considered adding a 3rd roommate, and at one point even a 4th roommate in the 5 days that I was here in August. Went through a few different candidates for roommates, and every time we went back to the drawing board. We started DMing people on Instagram, but ultimately everything came from that Facebook page. The second to last day that I was in the city, we met this one girl, we had a FaceTime call with her, and we ended up selecting her as our 3rd roommate. I really wanted to take on a 3rd roommate because I was already nervous enough about welcoming someone else into my space when I film at home. This is a very vulnerable job, and you have to be comfortable with the person that's around you to be comfortable to perform this job. But at this point, I was just grasping at straw. I was like, I just want a place to live. So when I was touring a unit in Manhattan with one of the previous candidates before the final roommate candidate that we selected for the 3rd roommate, my other roommate Karen was the one that came to the actual apartment that we ended up getting. She had sent me the pictures of it. We agreed, all right, let's go tour it. It's in Brooklyn. I didn't ever want to live in Brooklyn, but it's whatever. That said, let me remind you again, okay, about my 2 most important things, and the only 2 things that I'm asking for. Most importantly is natural lighting. The pictures that we saw on Street Easy are very typical pictures of street street easy. The exposure is pulled up all the way to 100. The lighting looks insane. Everything about it. Were there modern finishings in it? Absolutely not, but it looked really, really bright from the pictures. Once again, I am not the one that went to see the apartment before we signed the lease. She was. This unit ended up having about 15% natural light. Literally looked like it had not been touched by painters. It didn't look like it had been finished, to be completely honest. It was a 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom. The 1 bathroom looked like a literal dungeon, and one of the bedrooms didn't even have windows. Not only that, the building itself lived above a dog boarding service, i.e. there are dogs barking and screaming at all hours of the day. The tenants that lived there prior to us, when Karen was touring the unit, they told her, hey, one thing that we need to point out is it's really loud. Like, you can hear the dogs barking 24/7 in here. She did tell me that, but she did not stress to the extent in which they were actually barking. Not only that, they were drilling concrete right outside of our building, right outside of our window for the entire duration of our year-long lease. Mind you, no central AC, and when I went to take the trash out down in the boiler room, I made eye contact with probably 6 or 7 rats during my 10 months of living there. And I didn't know any of this until the day I moved in. Once we found the 3rd roommate, we had a group message that was started up until the time we signed the lease. Once we signed the lease, there was no further communication in the group message between the 3 of us. Can't tell you why, there just wasn't. There were phone calls between Karen and the 3rd roommate, but there was no direct communication between myself and the 3rd roommate. At this point, Karen is still virtually a stranger, but because of the trauma bonding, I felt instantly connected to her, unlike the 3rd roommate, who was quite literally a complete and utter stranger to me. So Karen and the 3rd roommate ended up moving in early. They had a bit of a different moving timeline than I did. While my lease was up before the end of August, I couldn't actually leave Nashville until September 4th because of the transport service that was picking up my dog to drive her here. They ended up moving in on August 31st. Technically, our lease didn't start until September 1st. So because there was that earlier date that was negotiated with them and the landlord, there was no cleaning done to the apartment. There were no repairs done. Every crevice of my bedroom when I moved in was dust. It was just an absolute disgusting mess. Let's go back to the group message because it's actually very important. So these phone calls and separate text messages that were exchanged between Karen and the 3rd roommate, when they both moved in on August 31st, this was Karen's her prime opportunity to manipulate the situation. This is the time that she made both of us 2 pawns in her game. She started spitting all of these ideas to me about the 3rd roommate and vice versa. So at the point that I moved in on September 4th, me and the complete stranger of a 3rd roommate already had impressions formed of each other before we had even met. Karen essentially made herself the leader in all of this because the things that she was telling me about the 3rd roommate and the things she was telling the 3rd roommate about me were not good things. So the impressions that we had of each other by the time I moved in were not good ones. On the day that I moved in, September 4th, Karen and I were absolutely attached at the hip, like inseparable. Whenever I would talk about her to my family or friends, I would literally refer to her as a soul sister, like a true best friend. I know at that point I had only known her for 2 months, but because of the trauma bonding, I ignored everything else that I had heard about her. Just instantly felt like we had known each other for such a long time. Karen had just started dating her boyfriend a couple months prior to me moving in, and to be honest, he reminds me so much of my brother. So the instant friendship and bond between the 3 of us, I was constantly a 3rd wheel, but I loved it because they both genuinely felt like my best friends so early on. In September of 2024, I moved in the middle of Fashion Week. So I had so many events that I was going to, and any event I was allowed a +1. Who was I bringing with me? The only friend that I had in the city, Karen. She got to attend so many events, meet so many cool people, get so many free products. She got to do free experiences with me. And I love being able to provide that type of experience for someone that doesn't get to all the time and give free products. But it was mostly for a comfort for me because New York influencer events are so unbelievably intimidating. I was even scared to go to those events in Nashville. Can't even imagine what they were going to be like in New York. So the second that I was offered to bring a +1, without question, Karen was coming with me. Fast forward to the end of September 26th, I traveled back to Nashville for one of my best friends was getting married. I had a group message at this point with Karen and her boyfriend, and I was already receiving text messages about the 3rd roommate, things that she was doing. She was using my products, everything that would make me even further pissed off at this person that I did not even know. And what's crazy is my first actual impression impression when I met this third roommate was she's really sweet. I really enjoyed talking to her. She was a little bit younger, but that's okay. She was just a sweet girl. And if had I not had those previous ideas put in my head before I even met her, this would have been a completely different experience. And the one thing that I said when I moved in is, you can use my products. I am more than willing to let you borrow anything that is mine. I love sharing my things with people, but just ask. It's just a respect thing to me. Please don't take anything without asking me, but just know, if you do ask, 9 times out of 10, I will always let you use it. I say that because that is the main thing Karen told me when I left that weekend was, the third roommate is using all your products. This is gone. She's eating your food, everything that would just make me so unbelievably mad that I lost my shit when I got home. Now, every time that she would tell me these things, I'd be like, well, she's also doing it to you. She's in your space, so why aren't you saying anything to her about it? Well, this is when I came to realize that Karen is as far avoidant as you can get. I am very much an anxious attachment style. She is someone that does not like confrontation. It makes her skin crawl. By the time I got back from my friend's wedding, I was absolutely livid with this third roommate. And I also want to preface, I'm a confrontational person, but only to the extent that I like to talk about my feelings. I feel uncomfortable if I know that there is some amount of like angst or something between me and someone else and we're sharing a living environment. I want to talk about it just to make it more comfortable for both of us. Never been one to get in a screaming argument. I've never hit anyone. I'm not an aggressive person like that. I can understand for people who are maybe not as confrontational, a little bit more reserved and avoidant, it could come across that way. My behavior when I returned from that weekend, I was so, my blood was boiling at that point that I absolutely unleashed my emotions, but I was also extremely uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable in this city. It was just such an unknown lifestyle for me that I think I maybe took a little bit of that out on this third roommate also. Truly the most frustrating part of the entire 10 months that I was living in this apartment is that I will, to this day, never know what was true and what wasn't true about what was told to me. After this argument that I got in with the third roommate, we quite literally did not utter words to each other for almost a month. But Karen and I were still attached at the hip, and it almost felt like it was the two of us living in this apartment, and then it was one other person that would surface every now and then. And I'm not proud of my behavior in the short stint, but when I continue this story, you will come to understand why I reacted the way I did. Now let's get to Halloween. Halloween, I think, was the worst night that I had with Karen, and we just never talked about it after Halloween. It was an awful night for me. We did not jive that night. We didn't necessarily get in a fight, but because she's not a confrontational person, I was never able to talk to her about it, so I just started to feel uncomfortable. For the next couple of weeks up until Thanksgiving, things started to change. I went from seeing and hanging out and talking to Karen 24/7 every single day to not seeing or speaking to her for 10 days straight. At this point in time, Alex and I had just started seeing each other. We weren't official yet, but I had made multiple efforts to get her and her boyfriend that I felt still very close to hang out with Alex and I wanted to do a foursome type of group date, and she just kept avoiding that at all possible costs. And in turn, it just kind of felt like she was avoiding me. We share a wall, and our apartment was technically, it's a 3-bedroom, but it was technically a 2-bedroom with a flex wall. If you don't know what that is, a flex wall is literally a steel plate that you put in between a service area in a room to basically divide it and make it 2 different rooms. And that's what it was. So when both of us were in our rooms, we could hear basically each other breathing. Like the way that sound travels between rooms, there's no way to hide anything. So I knew when she was home, she knew when I was home. So come Thanksgiving, it's the week that she's gonna leave. I go up to her room and I'm just like, hey, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I did something to make you uncomfortable, but like I would love to talk. But if this isn't the right time, like I just want to be sure if I'm good, if you're good. And when I tell you I've never seen so much hatred in someone's eyes, like she did not want me standing in her doorway, no. And she said, I'm fine. Yeah, everything's fine. And I said, okay, well, I hope you have a great holiday, safe travels, like enjoy your time with your family. We'll talk when you get back. She goes, okay. Let me backtrack a little. After that conversation between Karen and I, which was not even a conversation, she ended up leaving the next day for almost a solid 2 weeks. She didn't come back until a couple days before New Year's Eve. I ended up staying here for the holidays, and for the first time, like ever, I found myself in the apartment alone with the third roommate. At this point in my life, I was living in such a constant state of anxiety. I was so unbelievably uneasy and uncomfortable all the time. I was so confused about whatever had happened between Karen and I was really hoping to get some form of clarity before she left for such an extended period of time, but I didn't. So I confided in the one person that I thought I could at that point, which was the third roommate. We sat down early in the morning one day and I was like, listen, I don't know what happened between Karen and I, but she's not talking to me. I feel like she's acting a little different. Have you noticed anything? We talked about that for a little bit, but then honestly, the opportunity just seemed right for me to sit there and just straight up apologize and almost reintroduce myself, because I felt like we never actually got a really true, genuine, authentic introduction to each other. We spent about 2.5 hours talking, chatting, getting to know each other, and honestly, she made me feel a lot better. From my understanding, we were kind of starting from scratch and building a whole new friendship. So then fast forward to Christmas Day, I get a text from Karen that basically says, Merry Christmas, like whenever I get back in town, let's sit down and talk. I at least owe you a conversation. I had a great holiday with my family when they came in town. I had a great holiday with Alex, and then I got this and it just kind of seemed like cherry on top of the cake. I was like, yes, I'm gonna go into the new year with a clean slate and I'm gonna finally get a chance to understand what happened between the two of us. December 28th rolls around and that's when Karen gets back. Her boyfriend is over the second she gets home. And so the three of us are sitting down on the couch. Mind you, this is really the first time her and I have sat down and had a conversation in, I kid you not, over a month. We talked for about an hour and a half and it was the most unusually normal conversation that we have had in weeks. Genuinely felt like no time had passed, nothing had happened between the two of us, and we were just talking as normal. Remember when I was leaving the conversation, I went over to Alex's apartment and he was like, so how'd it go? I was like, oddly, it went really well, but we didn't talk about anything. Like, I have absolutely no clarity to the situation that was before Christmas. Like, it just kind of seemed like everything was normal. So I don't know, I'm just gonna kind of go about my business as usual. From December 28th to January 14th. Yeah, I remember those 2 dates exactly because they are that significant in my memory. Karen and I exchanged a couple text messages here and there, very casual, lighthearted, didn't necessarily seem angry, but like things just still didn't really feel normal. She would let Josie out, I would let her dog out. Like, it was very casual, but almost strictly roommates, not really necessarily a friendship. Now, coming to January 14th, when I tell you I was absolutely miserable in that apartment, I recall several times I would call my mom in my bedroom whispering to her, because again, the steel wall that separates the two rooms, you can hear each other breathing, was sobbing on the phone to my mom, just telling her how much I hate it here, telling her how uncomfortable I feel here. And again, this is my workspace, so I felt like my content was being everything was being impacted by my mood in this apartment, which was terrible. Now, my relationship with the third roommate was a very slow burn to grow. We're at a place where we could be cordial and we could be friendly with one another, but we weren't on like a friendly texting exchange basis at that point. It was just, again, we were starting from scratch. Now we get to January 14th, the specific date. At this point, Karen and I were basically avoiding each other, is what it felt like to me. At that point, I had gone back to therapy because, hello, I needed it. And my therapist told me to go into this conversation just literally relaying my boundaries as a roommate. Like, I just wanted to have a cordial living environment. I wanted to be good roommates to each other, and that's it. At that point, I had lost complete and utter faith that we were going to be able to rekindle our friendship and start new. Ultimately, we were strangers, and if I couldn't read you to the point that I had absolutely no idea what happened between the two of us, I just didn't know that there was much of a friendship to salvage in the first place. So at that point, I wanted to go into the conversation with it being like 30 minutes, let's just relay our boundaries to each other and have it be that. This conversation took place in our living room. My third roommate was home for the first hour and a half of the conversation, which made me feel extremely uncomfortable. But when I went into this conversation, again, I was planning on it being very short and sweet, to the point, having a very neutral tone. To my understanding, that completely pissed off Karen, that I didn't come into this emotional, I didn't come into this conversation heated, which I will say is very out of the norm for me because I am an extremely emotional person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. The main point was to relay one boundary and one boundary only, and it was that her boyfriend was overstaying his welcome. He was in our apartment during all hours of the day. I work from home. I don't appreciate that, and I don't need him to be here until after at least 3 p.m. Okay, I'll give you that. I film for a living, and I know that if your boyfriend's sitting in your bedroom, he is hearing every single word that I am saying on my phone as I'm filming, and that made me so uncomfortable to the point where I didn't even want to film. I didn't want to do my job. Legal reasons, I'm going to spare the specific details of the conversation, but all you need to know is it was a whirlwind. It was a roller coaster of a conversation. It started very neutral, then it got defensive, heated, yelling, and then it ended in crying, and it even ended in a hug. At the very end, Karen said to me that she cares about me, she cares about our friendship, she wants to start fresh, and we hugged. And Karen does not hug. She is not one for physical touch, as she has told me many times. So when I left that conversation, I was thinking, all right, like, pat myself on the back. We are good to go. We are going into the new year, starting fresh. Maybe we'll be friends again. Boy, was I wrong in that. After that conversation ended, I went to Alex's for the night. I come back the next morning, Karen is gone, and I'm sitting there with the third roommate. And because she was there for the first hour of the conversation when Karen and I were yelling, she asked me if I was okay. Like, how did everything go? I was like, yeah, actually, I know that you heard a pretty heated part of the conversation, but it ended well. It ended cordially. I think we're in a good place now. And she was like, okay, well, as a woman, I feel that I need to tell you this because if someone said these things about me, I would want to know. Mind you, this was less than 12 hours after that conversation with Karen, okay? My understanding, the way I perceived the conversation between Karen and the third roommate is that Karen told her everything that was opposite of what she told me during my conversation. I was told that she spoke about my financial status, she spoke about my relationship, she ultimately spoke about anything that would paint me in a bad light to the third roommate, and also said that she had no intention of ever being my friend again. Again, let me reiterate, this was all my understanding, my perception of what was told to me by the third roommate, but at this point, I was mind fucked. I was so confused. I did not understand what happened the day before. I didn't understand what happened now. And I was honestly frustrated because when I initially went into that conversation with Karen, I was fine not having it be a friendship. I just wanted things to feel comfortable in this apartment. Not even normal. I realized we were going to have to figure out a new normal, but just comfortable. I felt dragged into the emotional side of that conversation, and the empath in me, which frustrates me so much sometimes, it feels like I fell for it. I fell for everything that was told to me. At this point, I lost it. I was done. And that's all I needed to hear from the third roommate. So after that, I blocked Karen and her boyfriend on all social media. I did not allow them access to my life at that point. And January 14th, those were the last words that were ever uttered between Karen and I. My lease did not end until August 31st. I swear it was like one crazy chapter ended and another crazy chapter started. So from January 15th, when I blocked Karen and her boyfriend, to when I moved out on June 8th, I faced the wrath of Karen. I will say at this point, my friendship or relationship of any sort with the third roommate, again, was a slow burn, but it continued to flourish and it continued to grow. It seemed like a lot of the conversations that we were having were about Karen and her boyfriend. Anytime we would talk, it would be about what Karen had said about me when I was out of the apartment or what transpired between them after I blocked them. It just seemed like my name lived in her mouth. My intention when I block someone is to never have anything to do with you ever again. Unfortunately, when you live with someone and you're signed on the same lease as someone, you can't necessarily break free that easily. I learned that the hard way. I think I was living in a state of anxiety in December. Oh, it was a whole new level. If you followed me and watched my videos when I lived in that apartment, then you saw the number of times that I complained about how small my bedroom was. The only place that I felt safe in that apartment, truly safe, was in my bedroom. I had no desire to film. I was going through a lot of hard stuff with my family, with my management. It was just such an uncomfortable time for me. I was so unsure of myself. Living in such an uneasy environment mentally destroyed me. I mean, I was really going through it. By like March, it got to the point where I kept all of my shower products in my bedroom. I went through 4 or 5 bottles of face wash in like 2 months. I go through maybe 1 bottle of face wash in a month and a half. Ended up taking all of my shower products and I put them in a shower caddy, kept it in my bedroom that I took to and from the bathroom with me. I literally felt like I was living in prison. I dreaded going home. I literally sometimes would cry on the walk from Alex's apartment back to my apartment. I know that my animals could sense my anxiety too, so it made Josie's anxiety even worse. And with the conditions in the apartment itself, with the constant barking of dogs, the drilling concrete outside my window, it was just, oh my God, you guys, it was miserable. I can't paint the picture clear enough for you. I think it was around like the middle of March, I started talking to Alex about wanting to move out, and that I felt so stuck. I think the majority of 2025, I can say the one feeling to describe it was stuck. There was no way in hell I was making it to September 1st without literally losing sight of myself. In April, I start browsing apartments. I had reached out to my landlord, just expressing my concerns for my safety, my emotional well-being, and just relaying that I'm not in a good place case, and I am requesting to get a sublet for my room for the remainder of my lease. Obviously, the easiest option, best option, would have been to just get a sublet for the rest of the lease, but unfortunately, my roommates did not approve of that option. It seemed like it was just not a feasible option for me at the time, so I decided for my mental sanity, okay, I'll take on the burden of paying 2 rents for 3 months, and that's exactly what I did. I ended up moving out on June 8th. Unfortunately, once I moved out, I thought that it was going to be as easy as literally moving out, to just cut the cord that tied me to that apartment forever and wipe my hands clean and be done with it, but that was just not the way it worked out. And for legal reasons, I can't tell you why now. This has been such a year of learning lessons, mistakes, taking risks, and moving out and taking on the financial risk that I did for 3 months was the best and hardest decision I've ever made. Let this entire story be a lesson to you, or a reminder to you not to trust a stranger just because you trauma bond. Because you never know who or what they might actually be.